A car climbs a curb and hits a metal fence. Someone is sitting in the front seat. He isn't driving. Neither is the car. So who is? Last year, a United States senator sent the same letter to 7 companies building self-driving cars: Tesla, Waymo, Zoox, Aurora, May Mobility, Motional, Neuro. Ed Markey wanted one number. How often does a human being step in and take over? It sounds like a simple question. It is not. Because the answer depends entirely on what you think take over means. And every company in that list has a slightly different definition, chosen carefully. 6 of the 7 said the same thing. Their remote staff do not drive. They advise. They suggest a route. They flag a situation. The car's software can take that advice or ignore it. The machine stays in control. One company answered differently. Tesla told the committee that its remote operators are authorized, in what it called rare cases, to take direct control of the vehicle. Not to advise it, to drive it, up to 10 miles an hour. Those operators sit in Austin or in Palo Alto. The car could be anywhere the service runs. There's a person at a desk, a screen, a set of controls, and a cellular link in between. That makes Tesla the outlier among the 7. Not because it uses humans, all of them do, but because of where it draws the line between helping and driving. And here's where it gets more complicated than a clean story about one company. Waymo has been the loudest about that line. It told the same committee it does not use remote driving where a human performs the driving task. Its people can nudge a stopped car forward to clear a lane, 2 miles an hour, steering fixed. And by Waymo's own account, that tool has never been used on a public road. That's a real distinction. Advising a car is not the same as steering it. Waymo does have one exception, and it's worth stating precisely because it describes a situation we're coming back to. A specially trained agent, based in the United States, can prompt a stuck vehicle to move forward at 2 miles an hour, at fixed steering angles, to get it out of a travel lane. Waymo says that function has never been used outside of training. But at a Senate hearing this year, Waymo's chief safety officer acknowledged something the company had not been loud about at all. When one of its vehicles asks for guidance, the person answering may be in the Philippines, not driving, advising. By Waymo's definition, that's the whole difference. But it means the humans in the loop are further away and less visible than almost any writer would guess. Philip Koopman has spent more than 25 years on autonomous vehicle safety at Carnegie Mellon. He wrote the safety standard the industry uses as a reference point. And more than a year ago, he published a piece with a title that hasn't been seriously contested: All robotaxis have remote drivers. That's the part to sit with. The disagreement isn't over whether humans are involved. Everyone agrees they are. The disagreement is over what to call it. And calling it assistance instead of driving carries enormous weight, because it determines which safety rules apply and who is responsible when something goes wrong. So, what happens when the human takes over? Tesla filed its robotaxi crash reports with the federal safety regulator, as required. But it filed the narratives, the part that describes what actually happened, under a confidential business information designation. The public got the fact of a crash, not the story of it. Tesla was the only company doing this. Waymo, Zoox, Avride, May Mobility, all of them filed readable accounts. Tesla's argument for withholding was that it would suffer financial harm if the details became public. In May, it reversed course, dropping the designations on all 17 crashes from the Austin launch in July 2025 through March of this year. And credit where it's due, twice over. That disclosure is the only reason this episode exists. And it made Tesla look better, not worse. Most of those crashes were rear endings and sideswipes by inattentive human drivers, the same pattern Waymo reports. The company spent a year hiding data that largely exonerated it. But the same transparency cuts both ways, because 3 of the narratives read the same way. The automated system gets stuck. A human takes over remotely. The human crashes the car. Austin, July 2025. The safety monitor requests support because the car won't proceed forward. The teleoperator takes control, gradually increases speed, turns the car left toward the far side of the street, drives it up the curb, and hits a metal fence. 8 miles an hour. Someone reported a minor injury. Austin, January 2026. The safety monitor asks for help with navigation. The teleoperator takes over from a standstill, proceeds straight, and hits a temporary construction barricade at 9, scraping the front left fender and tire. Houston, May 2026. A car is stopped on a dead-end residential road and needs help getting out. In Tesla's own words, while the system was being supported remotely, the vehicle entered a grassy slope, and, as the operator continued to recover it, they made contact with a hidden tree stump. All 3 happen at the handoff, the moment control passes from the machine to the person, which is exactly the moment safety researchers have been pointing at for years. The Houston report has something the other 2 don't. On the federal crash form, there's a field called Driver Operator Type. Across 24 Tesla incident reports, it says none 20 times. It says in vehicle 3 times. And once, on Houston, it says remote. That's not a journalist's characterization. That's the company telling the federal government in a structured data field that the person driving the car was not in the car. But now look back at the other 2. A teleoperator took the wheel and crashed in both. Neither one is coded remote. On both, that field says none. The only reason we know a human was driving is that somebody wrote it into the narrative. The same narratives that stayed sealed for most of a year. One more thing. Tesla has filed exactly 1 crash report in Houston. This is it. Driving a car you're not sitting in is a genuinely difficult engineering problem, and not for obvious reasons. The first is lag. Every input travels from a desk to a cell tower to a vehicle and back. Even a fraction of a second stacks on top of normal human reaction time, and control gets unstable. Koopman's warning before the Austin launch was blunt. He called the approach inherently unreliable, because eventually the connection drops at the worst possible moment. The second is that you can't feel anything. No weight shifting, no engine note, no peripheral vision. You get camera feeds. A person steering a real vehicle through a screen has a fraction of the situational awareness of a driver in the seat. The third is arithmetic. Watching 10 cars in Austin is a staffing problem you can solve. A fleet of 1 million is a different kind of problem entirely. And the failure modes that matter aren't the average case, they're the bad day. Cell tower outages, fiber cuts, dead zones that hit multiple carriers at once. This isn't hypothetical, and it isn't new. In 2023, a Cruise robotaxi in San Francisco struck a pedestrian who had been thrown into its path by another car, then dragged her about 20 feet. The role of remote operators became a focus of the investigation. Cruise is gone now, But the thing that ended it wasn't the crash alone. It was what the company did and didn't disclose about it afterward. And there's one more precedent worth knowing. At Tesla's robot demonstration event in 2024, the Optimus humanoids that mixed drinks and chatted with guests were being operated remotely by humans. Guests at the event were not told. Here's the structural problem underneath all of this. There is no safety standard for teleoperating a self-driving car, not a mandatory one. The industry has produced a guidance document, but it's a guideline rather than a standard. It doesn't identify hazards, and it doesn't address what happens when the connection drops. And the consortium that wrote it counts the robotaxi companies among its members. So there's no required minimum for how fast the link has to be. No required training standard for the operators. No required disclosure of how often they intervene. No definition binding on anyone of where advising ends and driving begins. Every company gets to answer that question for itself and then market the answer. Which brings us to the part you should be suspicious of, including when I say it. Every remote takeover that has shown up in a Tesla crash report ended in a crash. That sounds devastating. It isn't, not on its own. We only see the takeovers that crashed, because a takeover that goes fine doesn't generate a report. There could be 10,000 clean ones. We have no idea. And that's the actual story. Not that remote operators are dangerous. We cannot know that from this data. The story is that we cannot know it. Tesla doesn't publish how often its operators intervene. Neither does anyone else, in any form that would let you compare them. A senator asked 7 companies for that number. He got definitions back. The reason this matters isn't rider anxiety, it's liability. If a car drives itself into a fence, that's a product. There's a manufacturer, a safety regulator, a recall process. If a person drives a car into a fence, that's a driver, with a license and insurance and a name. When a person at a desk in another city or another country steers a car into a fence, our entire legal machinery has to pick one of those 2 boxes. And every company involved has a strong incentive to leave that question open as long as possible. Some of this work is already being contracted out to third-party operations, which means when something goes wrong, the question of who was driving can be passed further down the chain to whoever is least equipped to answer it. Nobody's in the front seat. Somebody might be at a desk in Palo Alto or in Manila. They might be advising the car. They might be steering it. You will not be told which. You will not be told how often. And right now, there is no rule that says anyone has to tell you. That's not a conspiracy. It's just a number nobody has to publish yet.